Record 31. The Great Operation. I forgave everything. The collision of trains. Saved at the very last moment, when it seemed that there was nothing to hold to. Was the end. It was as if you already ascended the steps towards the threatening machine of the well-doer, or as if the great last bell with a heavy thud already covered you, and for the last time in life you looked at the blue sky to swallow it with your eyes. Then suddenly, it was only a dream. The pink sun is pink and cheerful, and the wall. What happiness to be able to touch the cold wall, and the pillow, to delight endlessly in the little cavity formed by your own head in the white pillow. This is approximately what I felt when I read the State Journal this morning. It has been all a terrible dream, and this dream is over. And I was so feeble, so unfaithful, that I thought of selfish voluntary death. I'm ashamed now to reread the last lines of yesterday, but let them remain as a memory of that incredible might have happened, which will not happen. On the front page of the State Journal, the following gleamed: Rejoice! For from now on we are perfect. Before today, your own creation engines were more perfect than you. Why? For every spark from a dynamo is a spark of pure reason, each motion of a piston a pure syllogism. Is it not true that the same faultless reason is within you? The philosophy of the cranes, presses, and pumps is finished and clear like a circle, but is your philosophy less circular? The beauty of a mechanism lies in its immutable, precise rhythm, like that of a pendulum. But have you not become as precise as a pendulum, you who are brought up on the system of Taylor? Yes, but there is one difference. Mechanisms have no fancy. Did you ever notice a pump cylinder during its work show upon its face a wide distance, sensoriously dreaming smile? Did you ever hear cranes restlessly toss about a sigh at night during the hours designed for rest? No. Yet on your faces, you may well blush with shame. The guardians have seen more and more frequently those smiles, and they have heard your sighs, and you should hide your eyes for shame. The historians of the United States all tendered their resignations so as to be relieved from having to record such shameful occurrences. It is not your fault you are ill, and the name of your illness is fancy. It is a swarm that gnaws black wrinkles on one's forehead. It is a fever that drives one to run farther and farther, albeit farther may begin where happiness ends. It is the last brigade on our road to happiness. Rejoice, this brigade has been blasted at last. The road is open. The latest discovery of our state science is that there is a center for fancy, a miserable little nervous knots in the lower region of the frontal lobe of the brain. A triple treatment of this knot with X-rays will cure you of fancy forever. You are perfect. You are mechanized. The road to 100% happiness is open. Hasten then, all of you, young and old, hasten to undergo the great operation. Hasten to the auditoriums where the great operation is being performed. Long live the great operation. Long live the United States. Long live the well-doer. You, Had you read all this not in my records, which look like an ancient strange novel? Had you, like me, held in your trembling hands the newspaper smiling of topographic ink? If you knew, as I do, that all this is most certainly reality, if you the reality of today, then that of tomorrow, would you not feel the very things I feel? Would you not? Your head whirl as mine does? Would there not run over your back and arms those strange, sweet, icy needles? Would you not feel that you were a giant, an atlas? That if only you stood up and straightened out, you would reach the ceiling with your head? I snatched the telephone receiver. I-330. Yes, 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 330. And then, swallowing my own words, I shouted, "Are you at home? Yes. Have you read? You are reading now. Is it not stupendous?" Yes. A long, dark silence. The wires buzzed almost imperceptibly. She was thinking. "I must see you today without fail. Yes, in my room, after 16, without fail. Dear. She's such a dear. Without fail." I was smiling, and I could not stop. I felt I should carry that smile with me into the street like a light above my head. Outside, the wind ran over me, whirling, whistling, whimpering, but I felt even more cheerful. "All right, go on, moaning and groaning. The walls cannot be torn down." Flying, leaden clouds broke over my head. Well, let them. They could not eclipse the sun. We chained it to the zenith, like so many Joshua's sons of nuns. At the corner of a group of Joshua's sons of nuns were standing with their foreheads pasted to the glass of the wall. Inside, on the dazzling white table, already a number lay. One could see two naked souls diverging from under the sheet in a yellow angle. White medics bent over his head, a white hand, a stretched out hand holding a syringe filled with something. "And you? What are you waiting for?" I asked nobody in particular, or rather all of them. "And you?" Someone's round head turned to me. "Oh, afterwards. I must first." Somewhat confused, I left the place. I really had to see I-330 first, but why first? I could not explain to myself. The docks, the integral, bluish like ice, was glistening and sparkling. The engine was caressingly grumbling, repeating some one word as if it were my word, a familiar one. I bent down and stroked the long cold tube of the motor. Dear, what a tube! Tomorrow it will come to life. Tomorrow, for the first time, it will tremble with burning, flaming steams in its bowels. With what eyes would I have looked at the glass monster, and everything remained as it was yesterday? If I knew that tomorrow at 12 I should betray it. Yes, betray. Someone behind cautiously touched my elbow. I turned around. The plate-like, flat face of the second builder. "Do you know already?" he asked. "What, about the operation?" "Yes." "How, everything, suddenly?" "No, not that. The trial fight is put off until day after tomorrow, on account of the operation. They rushed us for nothing. We hurried." "On account of that operation? Funny, limited man." He could see no further than his own platter. If only he knew that but for the operation tomorrow at 12, he would be locked up in a glass cage, would be tossing about, trying to climb the walls. At 12:30 we came into my room. I came into my room. I saw Eudash. She was sitting at my table, firm, straight, bone-like, resting her right cheek on her hand. She must have waited for a long while, because when she brusquely rose to meet me, there remained on her cheek 5 white imprints of her fingers. For a second, that terrible moaning came back to me. Beside me, I-330, indignant, but for a second only. All was at once washed off by the sun of today, as it happens sometimes when you enter your room on a bright day and absent-mindedly turn on the lights. The bulb shines, but it is out of place, droll, unnecessary. Without hesitation, I held out my hand to her. I forgave her everything. She firmly grasped both my hands and pressed them till they hurt, her cheeks quivering and hanging down like ancient precious ornaments. She said with emotion, "I was waiting. I want only one moment. I only wanted to say how happy, how joyous I am for you. You realize, of course, that tomorrow or the day after tomorrow you will be healthy again, as if born anew?" I noticed my papers on the table. The last 2 pages of my record of yesterday. They were in the place where I left them the night before. If she knew what I wrote there, although I did not care after all, now it was only history. It was the ridiculously far-off distance, like an image through a reserved opera glass. "Yes," I said, "a while ago. While passing through the avenue, I saw a man walking ahead of me. His shadow stretched along the pavement, and think of it, his shadow was luminous. I think more than that, I am absolutely certain that tomorrow all shadows will disappear. Not a shadow from any person or anything. The sun will be shining through everything." She, gently and earnestly, "You are a dreamer. I should not allow my children in school to talk that way." She told me something about the children, that they were all led in one herd to the operation, that it was necessary to blind them afterwards with ropes, and that one must love piteously, yes, piteously, and that one thought she might finally decide to. She smoothed the grayish-blue fold of the uniform that fell between her knees, swiftly pasted her smiles all over me, and went out. Fortunately, the sun did not stop today. The sun was running. It was already 16 o'clock. I was knocking at the door. My heart was knocking. "Come in." I threw myself upon the floor near her chair to embrace her limbs, to lift my head upwards and look into her eyes, first into one, then into the other, and in each of them to see the reflection of myself in wonderful capacity. There beyond the wall it looked stormy. There the clouds were laden. Let them be. My head was overcrowded with impetuous words, and I was speaking aloud, and flying with the sun I knew not where. No, now we know where we are. Flying planets were following me, planets sparkling with flame and populated with fury, singing flowers and mute planets, blue ones where rational stones were unified into one organized society, and planets which, like our own Earth, had reached already the apex of 100% happiness. Suddenly, from above, "And don't you think that at the apex are precisely stones unified into an organized society?" The triangle grew sharper and sharper, darker and darker. "Happiness? Well, desires are tortures, are they not? It is clear, therefore, that happiness is where there are no longer any desires. Not a single desire any more. What an error! What an absurd prejudice! It was that formerly we would mark happiness with the sign plus. No, absolute happiness must be marked minus. Divine minus. I remembered. I stammered, unintelligibly. Absolute zero. Minus 273 degrees Celsius. Minus 273 degrees. Exactly? A somewhat cold temperature. But does it not prove that we are at the summit? As before, she seemed somehow to speak for me and through me, developing to the end of my own thoughts, but there was something so morbid in her tone that I could not refrain. With an effort, I drew out a no. No, I said. You are mocking. She burst out laughing, loudly, too loudly. Swiftly, in a second, she laughed herself to some unseen edge, stumbled, and fell over. Silence. She stood up, put her hands upon my shoulders, and looked into me for a long while. Then she pulled me towards her, and everything seemed to have disappeared, save her sharp, hot lips. Goodbye. The words came from afar, from above, and reached me not at once, only after a minute, perhaps 2 minutes later. Why, goodbye? You have been ill, have you not? Because of me, you have committed crimes. Has not all this tormented you? And now you have the operation to look forward to. You will be cured of me, and that means goodbye. No! I cried, a piteously sharp black triangle on a white background. What? Do you mean that you don't want happiness? My head was breaking into pieces. Two logical trains collided and crawled upon each other, rattling and smoldering. Well, I'm waiting. You must choose the operation and 100% happiness, or I cannot. Without you, I must not. Without you, I said, or perhaps I only thought. I am not sure which, but I naturally 30 heard. Yes, I know, she said. Then her hands still on my shoulders, and her eyes not letting my eyes go. Then, until tomorrow at 12, you remember? No, it was postponed for a day after tomorrow. So much better for us. At 12, day after tomorrow. I walked alone in the dusky streets. The wind was whirling, carrying, driving me like a piece of paper. Fragments of this leaden sky were roaring, soaring. They had to soar through the infinite for another day or two. Units of numbers were brushing my side, yet I was walking alone. It was clear to me that all were saved, but that there was no salvation for me, for I do not want salvation. Record 32. I do not believe. Tractors, a little human splinter. Do you believe that I will die? Oh yes, man is mortal. I am a man, consequently. No, not that. I know that you know it. But I asked, has it ever happened that you actually believed it? Believed definitely? Believed not with your reason, but with your body? That you actually felt that some day those fingers which now hold this page will become yellow, icy? No, of course you cannot believe this. That is why you have not jumped from the 10th floor to the pavement below now. That is why you eat, turn over these pages, shave, smile, write. Yes, this very thing. Yes, exactly. This is alive to me today. I know that that small black hand on the clock will slide down there, here towards midnight. Then again it will start to ascend, and it will cross some last border, and the improbable tomorrow will have arrived. I know it, but somehow I do not believe it. Or perhaps I think it is 24 hours or 24 years. Therefore, I am still able to act, to hurry, to answer questions, to climb the rope ladder to the integral. I'm still able to feel how the ladder is shaking the surface of the water, and I still understand that I must grasp the railing, and I am still able to feel the cold glass in my hands. I see the transparent living cranes bending their long necks, carefully feeding the integral with the terrible explosive food which the motors need. I still see below on the river the blue veins and knots of water swollen by the wind. Yet all this seems very distant from me, foreign, flat, like a draught on a sheet of paper. And it seems to me strange. Then the flat, draught-like face of the second builder suddenly asks, "Well then, how much fuel for the motors shall we load on? If we count on 3, or say 3.5 hours." I see before me, over a draught, my hand with the counter and the logarithmic dial at the figure 15. 15 tons. But you'd better take, yes, better take 1,000. I said that because I know that tomorrow. I noticed that my hands and the dial began to tremble. 1,000? What do you need such a lot for? That would last a week. No, more than a week. Well, nobody knows. I do know. The wind whistled. The air seemed to be stuffed to the limit with something invisible. I had difficulty in breathing, difficulty in walking, and with difficulty, slowly but without stopping for a second, the hand of the accumulating tower was crawling at the end of the avenue. The peak of the tower reached into the very clouds, dull blue, groaning in the subdued way, sunking electricity from the clouds. The tubes of the musical tower resounded, as always, 4 abreast, but the rows did not seem as firm as usual. They were swinging, bending more and more, perhaps because of the wind. There, they seemed to have stumbled upon something at the corner, and they drew back and stopped, congealed, a close mass, a clot, breathing rapidly. At once, all had stretched their necks like geese. "Look! No! Look! Look! There! Quick!" They? Who are they? Ah, never! Never! I'd rather put my head straight into the machine. Silence! Are you crazy? On the corners of the door of the auditorium were ajar, a heavy column of about 50 people. The word people is not the right one. These were heavy-wheeled automatons, bound in iron and moved by an invisible mechanism. Not people, but a sort of human-like tractor. Over their heads, floating in the air, a white banner with the golden sun embroidered on it, and the rays of the sun. "We are the first. We have already been operated upon. Follow us, all of you." Then they slowly, unhesitatingly moved through the crowd, and it was clear that if they had had in their way a wall, a tree, a house, they would have moved on with no more hesitation through wall, tree, or house. In the middle of the avenue, they fused and stretched out into a chain, arm in arm, their faces turned towards us, and we, a human clot, tense, the hair pricking our heads, we waited. Our necks were stretched out, goose fashion. Clouds, the wind whistled. Suddenly the wings of the chain, right and left, bent quickly around us, and faster, like the heavy engine descending the hill. They closed the ring and pulled us towards the yawning door, and inside, somebody's piercing cry, "They are driving us in! Run!" All ran. Close to the wall there still was a open living gate of human beings. Everybody dashed through it, heads forward. Their heads became sharp wedges, so with their ribs, shoulders, hips, like a stream of water compressed into a fire hose, they spurted out in the form of a fan. and all around me stamping feet, raised arms, eunuchs, the double-curved S- with his transparent wing ears appeared for a moment close before my eyes. He disappeared as suddenly. I was alone among arms and legs, appearing for a second and disappearing. I was running. I dashed to the entrance of a house to stop for a breath, my back close to the door, and immediately a splinter borne by the wind, a human being was thrown towards me. All the while I have been following you. I do not want. Do you see? I do not want. I am ready to. Small round hands on my sleeves, round dark blue eyes. It was O-90. She just slipped along my body like a eunuch, which, its hanger broken, slips along the wall to fall upon the floor. Like a little bundle, she crumpled down me, below me on the cold doorsteps, and I stood over her, stroking her head, her face. My hands were wet. I felt as if I were very big and she very small, a small part of myself. I felt something quite different from what I felt towards I-330. I think that the ancients must have had similar feelings towards their private children. Below, passing through her hands, with which she was covering her face, a voice came to me. Every night, I cannot. If they cure me, every night I sit in the darkness alone and think of him and of what he will look like when if cured, I should have nothing to live with. Do you understand me? You must. An absurd feeling, yet it was there. I really must. Absurd because this duty of mine was nothing but another crime. Absurd because white and black cannot be one. Duty and crime cannot coincide. Or perhaps there is no black and white in life, but everything depends upon the first logical premise. If the premise is that I unlawfully gave her a child, it is all right. But only don't, I said. Of course I understand. I must take you to I-330, as I once offered to, so that she... Yes, this in a low voice, without uncovering her face. I helped her rise. Silently we went along the darkening streets, each busy with his own thoughts, or perhaps with the same thought. We walked between silent leaded houses, through the tense whipping branches of the wind. Through the whistling of the wind, all at once I heard, as if splashing through ditches, the familiar footsteps coming from some unseen point. At the corner I turned around, and among the clouds flying upside down, reflected in the dim glass of the pavement, I saw S-. Instantly my arms became foreign, swinging out of time, and I began to tell O-90 in a low voice that tomorrow, yes tomorrow, was the day of the first flight of the Integral, and that it was to be something that never happened before in all history. Great, miraculous. Think of it, for the first time in life to find myself outside the limits of our city and see who knows what is beyond the graying wall. O-90 looked at me extremely surprised, her blue eyes trying to penetrate mine. She looked at my senselessly swinging arms, but I did not let her say a word. I kept talking, and within me, apart from what I was saying, and audible only to myself, a thought was feverishly buzzing and knocking. Impossible! You must not lead him to I-330. Instead of turning to the right, I turned to the left. The bridge submissively bent its back in a slavish way to all three of us, to me, to O-, to him behind. Lights were falling from the houses across the water, falling and breaking into thousands of sparks which danced feverishly, sprayed with the mad white foam of the water. The wind was moaning like a tensely stretched string of a double basso. Somewhere not far away, through this basso behind all the while. The house where I live. At the entrance, O dash stopped and began. No, you promised, did you not, that? I did not let her finish. Hastily, I pushed her through the entrance, and we found ourselves in the lobby, at the controller's desk. The familiar hanging excitedly quivering cheeks, a group of numbers around. They were quarreling about something, heads bending over the banisters on the second floor. They were running downstairs one by one. But about that later. I at once drew O-90 to the opposite unoccupied corner and sat down with my back to the wall. I saw a dark, large-headed shadow gliding back and forth over the sidewalk. I took out my notebook. O-90 in her chair was slowly sinking as if she were evaporating from under her unif, as if her body were thawing, as if only her empty unif were left, and empty eyes taking one into the blue emptiness. In a tired voice, "Why did you bring me here? You lied to me." "No, not so loud. Look there. Here. Do you see? Through the wall?" "Yes, I see a shadow." "He is always following me. I cannot. Do you understand? I cannot. Therefore, I am going to write a few words to I-330. You take the note and go home. I know he will remain here." Her body began again to take form and move beneath the unif. On her face a faint sunrise, dawn. I put the note between her cold fingers, pressed her hand firmly, and for the first time looked into her blue eyes. "Goodbye. Perhaps some day." She freed her hand. Slightly bending over, she slowly moved away, made 2 steps, turned around quickly, and again we were side by side. Her lips were moving. With her lips and with her eyes, she repeated some inaudible word. What an unbearable smile! What suffering! Then the bent-over human splinter went to the door, bent over a little shadow beyond the wall. Without turning around, she went on faster, still faster. I went to U-Dash's desk, with emotion filling up her indignant gills. She said to me, "They have all gone crazy. He, for instance, is trying to assure me that he himself saw a naked man covered with hair near the ancient house." A voice from the group of empty, raised heads. "Yes, I repeat it, yes." "Well, what do you think of that?" Oh, what a delirium. The word delirium came out of her wife with so full of conviction, so unbending, that I asked myself, perhaps it really was nothing but delirium, all that has been going on around me of late. I glanced at my hairy hand and remembered. There are undoubtedly some drops of that blood on the sun and woods in you. That is why perhaps you... No, fortunately, it was not delirium. Or no, unfortunately, it was not delirium. Record 33. This without a synopsis, hastily the last. The day. Quick, to the newspaper. Perhaps there I read the paper with my eyes. Exactly, my eyes now are like a pen, or like a counting machine, which you hold and feel in your hands like a tool, something foreign, an instrument. In the newspaper, on the first page, in large print, "The enemies of happiness are awake. Hold to your happiness with both hands. Tomorrow all work will stop and all numbers are to come to be operated upon. Those who fail to come will be submitted to the machine of the well-doer." Tomorrow? How can there be? How can there be any tomorrow? The following my daily habits, I stretched out my arm. Instrument. To the bookshelf to put today's paper with the rest in a cover ornamented with gold. While doing this, what for? What does it matter? Never again shall I, in this cover, never. And out of my hands, down to the floor it fell. I stood looking all around, over all my room. Hastily, I was taking away, feverishly putting into some unseen valise everything I regretted leaving here: my desk, my books, my chair. Upon that chair sat I 3:30 that day. I was below on the floor, my bed. Then for a minute or two I stood and waited for some miracle to happen. Perhaps the telephone would ring, perhaps she would say that, but no miracle. I'm leaving, going into the unknown. These are my last lines. Farewell, you, my unknown beloved ones, with whom I have lived through so many pages, before whom I have bared my diseased soul, my whole self, to the last broken little screw, to the last cracked spring. I am going. Record 34. The Forgiven Ones, A Sunny Night, a Radio Wallycree. Oh, if only I actually had broken myself to pieces. If only I actually had found myself with her in some place beyond the wall, among beasts showing their yellow tusks. If only I had actually never returned here, it would be 1,000, 1,000,000 times easier. But now what? Now to go and choke that? But would it help? No. Take yourself in handy 503. Set into yourself the firm logical hub, at least for a short while. Weigh heavily with all your might over the lever, and like the ancient slave, turn the milestones of syllogisms until you have written down and understood everything that happened. When I boarded the Integral, everybody was already there, and everybody occupied his place. All the cells of the gigantic hive were filled. Through the glass of the decks, tiny ant-like people below, the telegraph, dynamo, transformers, those commissioned by the Scientific Bureau. Near them, the second builder and his two aides. All three had their heads down between their shoulders like turtles, their faces gray, autumnal, rayless. Well? I asked. Well, somewhat uncanny, replied one of them, smiling a gray, rayless smile. Perhaps we shall have to land in some unknown place, and generally speaking, nobody knows. I hardly could bear to look at them, when in an hour or so I was to throw them out with my own hands, to cast them out from the cozy figures of our table of hours, forever to tear them away from the mother's breasts of the United States. They reminded me of the tragic figures of the three foreign ones. A story known to all of our school children. It tells about three numbers who, by the way of experiment, were exempted for a whole month from any work. It happened long ago in the 3rd century AT, after the tables. Go wherever you will, do what you will, they were told. The unhappy three wandered the whole time about the place of their usual work, and gazed within their hungry eyes. They would stop on the plaza and for hours busy themselves repeating the motions which they were used to making during certain hours of the day. It became a bodily necessity for them to do so. They would saw and plane the air. With unseen sledgehammers they would bang upon unseen stakes. Finally, on the 10th day, they could bear it no longer. They took one other by the hand, entered the river, and the accompaniment of the march waded deeper and deeper into the water forever ended their sufferings. I repeat, it was hard for me to look at them, and I was anxious to leave them. I just want to take a glance into the engine room, and then off, I said. They were asking me questions. What voltage should be used for the initial spark? How much ballast water was needed in the tank aft? As If a phonograph were somewhere within me, I was giving quick and precise answers, but my inner self, was busy with my own thoughts. In the narrow passage, gray units were passing gray faces, and for a second, on one face with its hair low over its forehead, eyes gazing from deep beneath it was that same man. I understood. They had come, and there was no escape from it for me. Only minutes remained, a few dozen minutes, an infinitesimal molecule quiver of my whole body. This did not cease to the very end. It was as if an enormous motor were placed under the very foundation of my body, which was so light that the walls, partitions, cables, beams, lights, everything was quivering. I did not yet know whether she was there, but I had no time. They were calling me, quick, to the commander's bridge. Time to go. Where? Gray, rayless faces below the water, tense blue veins, heavy cast iron patches of sky. It was so difficult to lift my cast iron hand and to take up the receiver of the commander's phone. Up 45 degrees? A heavy explosion, a jerk, a rabid greenish white mountain of water aft. The deck beneath my feet began to move, soft as rubber, and everything below, the whole life, forever, for a second, falling deeper and deeper into a sort of funnel, becoming more and more compressed, the icy blue relief map of the city, the round bubbles of cupolas, the lonely leaden fingers of the accumulating tower, then instantaneously a cotton curtain of cloud. We pierced it, and there was the sun and the blue sky, seconds, minutes, miles. The blue was hardening, fast, filling with darkness. Like drops of cold silver sweat appeared the stars. A sad, unbearably bright, black, starry, sunny night, as if one had become deaf. One still saw that the pipes were roaring, but one only saw a dead silence all about. The sun was mute. It was natural, of course. One might have expected it. We were beyond the terrestrial atmosphere. The transition was so quick, so sudden that every one became timid and silent. Yet I thought I felt even easier under the fantastic mute sun. I had bounds over the inevitable border, having left my body somewhere there below, and I was soaring bodiless to a new world, where everything was to be different, upside down. Keep the same course, I shouted into the engine room, or perhaps it was not, but the phonograph in me, and the same machine with a mechanical hinge-like movement handed the commander's trumpet to the second builder, all permitted by the most delicate molecule quiver known only to me. I ran down the companionway to seek the door of the saloon. An hour late it was to latch and lock itself. At the door stood an unfamiliar number. He was small, with a face like 100 or 1,000 others, which are usually lost in a crowd, but his arms were exceptionally long. They reached down to the knees, as though by mistake they had been taken from another set of human organs and fastened to his shoulders. The long arms stretched out and barred the way. Where do you want to go? It was clear that he was not aware I knew everything. All right, perhaps it was necessary that it should be so. From above him, in deliberately significant tone, I said, I am the builder of the integral, and I am directing the test flight. Do you understand? The arm drew away. The saloon, heads covered with bristles, gray iron bristles, and yellow heads, and bald, ripe heads, were bent over the passage instruments and maps. Swiftly, with a glance, I gathered them in with my eyes. Off I ran, back along the long passage, then through a hatch into the engine room. There it was, hot from the red tubes, overheated by the explosions, a constant roar. The levers were dancing their desperate drunken dance, quivering ceaselessly with a barely noticeable quiver. The arrows on the dials there, at last, near a tachometer, a notebook in his hands, was the man with the low forehead. Listen, I shouted straight into his ear because of the war. Is she here? Where is she? She? There at the radio? I dashed over. There were three of them, all with receiving helmets on, and she seemed a head taller than usual, ringing, sparkling, flying like an ancient Valkyrie, and those bluish sparks from the radio seemed to emanate from her. From her also the ethereal lightning-like odor of ozone. Someone, you for instance, I said to her, panting from having run. I must send a message down to Earth, to the docks. Come, I shall dictate it to you. Close the apparatus. There was a small box-like cabin. We sat at the table side by side. I found her hand and pressed it hard. Well, what is going to happen? I don't know. Do you realize how wonderful it is to fly without knowing where, no matter where? It will soon be 12 o'clock and nobody knows what. And when night, there shall you and I be tonight, perhaps somewhere on the grass, on dry leaves? Blue sparks emanated from her, and the odor of lightning and the vibration became more and more frequent with me. Write down, I said loudly, panting, having run. Time 11:20. Speed 5,800. Last night, she came to me with your notes. I know everything. Don't talk. But the child is yours. I sent her over. She is already beyond the wall. She will live. I was back on the commander's bridge, back to the delirious night with its black, starry sky and the dazzling sun. The hands on the clock on the table were slowly moving from minute to minute. Everything was permitted by a thin, hardly perceptible quivering. Only I noticed it. For some reason, a thought passed through my head. It would be better if all this took place not here but somewhere below, nearer to Earth. Stop! I commanded. We kept moving by inertia, but more and more slowly. Now the integral was caught for a second by imperceptible little hair. For a second it hung motionless. Then the little hair broke and the integral, like a stone, dashed downwards with increasing speed. That way, in silence, minutes, tens of minutes passed. My pulse was audible. A hand on the dock before my eye came closer and closer to 12. It was clear to me I was a stone. I-330, the earth, and the stone was under the irresistible compulsion to fall downward, to strike the earth and break into small particles. What if already the hard blue smoke of the clouds appeared below? What if but the phonograph within me, like a hinge-like motion, precision, took the telephone and commanded low speed. The stone ceased falling. Only the four lower tubes were growling, two ahead and two aft. Only enough to hold the integral motionless, and the integral, only slightly trembling, stopped in the air as if anchored, about 1 kilometer from the earth. Everybody came out on deck. It was shortly before 12 before the sounding of the dinner gong, and leaned over the glass railing. Hastily, in huge gulps, they swallowed the unknown world which lay below, beyond the green wall. Amber, blue, green, the autumn woods, prairies, a lake, at the edge of a little blue saucer, some lone yellow debris, a threatening dried out yellow finger. It must have been the lower tower of an ancient church, saved by a miracle. Look, there to the right. There, over the green desert, a brown plop was rapidly moving. I held the telescope in my hands and automatically I brought it to my eyes. The grass reaching their chests, a herd of brown horses was galloping, and on their back they, black, white, and dark, behind me. I assure you, I saw a face. Go away. Tell it to someone else. Well, look for yourself. Here's the telescope. They had already disappeared. Endless green desert, and in the desert dominating it completely and dominating me and everybody. The piercing vibrations of the gong. Dinner time. 1 minute to 12. For a second, the little world around me became incoherent, dispersed. Someone's brass badge fell to the floor. It mattered little. Soon it was under my heel, a voice, and I tell you, it was a face, a black square, the open door of the main saloon, white teeth pressed together, smiling, and at that moment, when the clock began slowly, holding its breath between beats to strike, and then the front rows began to move towards the dining saloon. The rectangle of the doors was suddenly crossed by two familiar, unnaturally long arms. Stop! Someone's fingers sank piercing into my palm. It was I-330. She was beside me. Who is it? Do you know him? He is not. He was already lifted upon somebody's shoulders, above 100 other faces, his face like hundreds, like thousands of other faces, yet unique among the rest. In the name of the guardians, you to whom I talk, they hear me, every one of them hears me. I talk to you, we know. We don't know your numbers yet, but we know everything else. The integral shall not be yours. The test flight will be carried out the end, and you yourselves will not dare to make another move. You, with your own hands, will help to go on with the rest tests, and afterwards, well, I have finished. Silence. The glass plates under my feet seemed soft, cotton-like. My feet, too, soft, cotton-like. Beside me, she, with a dead smile, angry blue sparks, threw her tongue to me. Ah, it is your work. You did your duty. Well, she tore her hand from mine. The Valkyrie helmet with indignant wings was soon to be seen some distance in front of me. I was alone, torpid, silent. Like everyone else, I followed into the dining saloon. But it was not I. I told nobody save these white mute pages. I cried this to her within me, inaudibly, desperately, loudly. She was across the table, directly opposite me, and not once did she even touch me with her gaze. Beside her, someone's ripe, yellow-bald head. I heard. It was I-330's voice. Nobility of character, but, my dear professor, even a superficial etymological analysis of the word shows that it is a superstition, a remnant of the ancient feudal epoch. I felt I was growing pale, and that they would soon notice it, but the phonograph within me performed the prescribed 50 chewing movements of every bite. I locked myself into myself, as though into an opaque house. I threw up a heap of rocks before my door and lowered the window blinds. Afterwards, again, the telephone of the commander was in my hands, and again we made the flight with icy supreme anxiety through the clouds into this Icy, starry, sunny nights. Minutes, hours passed. Apparently, all that time the logical motor within me was working feverishly at full speed, for suddenly, somewhere at the distant point in the dark blue space, I saw my desk, and the gill-like cheeks of Udash over it, and the forgotten pages of my records. It became clear to me, nobody but she. Everything was clear to me. If only I could reach the radio room soon, wing-like helmets, the odor of blue lightnings. I remember telling her something in a low voice, and I remember how she looked through me, and how her voice seemed to come from a distance. I am busy. I am receiving a message from below. You may dictate yours to her. The small box-like little cabin. I thought for a second, and then I dictated in a firm voice. Time, 1440. Going down. Motor stopped. The end of all. The commander's bridge. The machine heart of the integral stopped. We were falling. My heart could not catch up and would remain behind and rise higher and higher into my throat. Clouds, and in the distant green spots, everything green, more and more distinct, running like a storm towards us. Soon the end. The porcelain-like white, distorted face of the second builder. It was he who struck me with all his strength. I hurt my head on something, and through the approaching darkness, while falling, I heard, "Full speed, aft!" Brusque jolt upward. Record 35. A ring, a carrot, a murder. I did not sleep all night, the whole night, but one thought. As a result of yesterday's mishap, my head is tightly bandaged. It seems to me not a bandage, but a ring, a pitiless ring of glass iron, riveted around about my head. And I am busy with the same thoughts, always the same thoughts, in the riveted circle, to kill you dash, to kill you dash, and then to go to her and say, "Now do you believe?" What is most disquieting is that to kill is dirty, primitive, to break her head with something. The thought of it gives me a particular sensation of something disgustingly sweet in my mouth, and I am unable to swallow my saliva. I am always spitting into my handkerchief, yet my mouth feels dry. I had in my closet a heavy piston rod, which cracked during the casting, and which I brought home in order to find out the cause of cracking with a microscope. I made my manuscript into a tube, let her read me to the last letter, pushed the broken piston into that tube, and went downstairs. The stairway seemed endless, the steps disgustingly slippery, liquid. I had to wipe off moisture from my mouth very frequently. Downstairs, my heart dropped. I took out the piston and went to the controller's table, but she was not there. Instead, an empty, icy desk with ink blots. I remembered that today all work was stopped. Everybody was supposed to be operated upon. Hence, there was no need for her to stay here. There was nobody to be registered. The street, it was windy. The sky seemed to be composed of soaring panels of cast iron. And exactly as it seemed for one moment yesterday, the whole world was broken up into separate, sharp, independent fragments, and each of these fragments was falling at full speed. Each would stop for a second, hang me in the air, and disappear without trace. It was as if the black, precise letters on this page should suddenly move apart and begin to jump hither and thither in fright, so that there would not be a word on this page, only nonsensical ap, jum, or The crowd seemed just as nonsensical, dispersed, not in rows, going forward, backwards, diagonally, transversely. Then nobody. For a second, while I was dashing at full speed, suddenly stopping, I saw on the second floor in the glass cage hanging in the air a man and a woman, a kiss. She's standing with her whole body bent backwards brokenly. This is for the last time, forever. At a corner, a thorny, moving bush of heads. Above the heads, separate, floating in the air, a banner. Down with the machines, down with the operation. And distinct from my own self, I thought, is it possible that each one of us bears such a pain that it can be removed only with his heart? That something must be done to each one before he. For a second, everything disappeared from me, from the world, except my beast-like hand with the heavy cast-iron package it held. A boy appeared. He was running, a shadow under his lower lip. The lower lip turned out to like a cuff of a rolled-up sleeve. His face was distorted. He wept loudly. He was running away from somebody. Stamping of feet was heard behind him. The boy reminded me, "You dash must be in school. I must hurry." I ran to the nearest opening of the underground railway. At the entrance, someone passed me and said, "Not running, no trains today, there." I descended. A sort of general delirium was reigning. The glitter of cut crystal suns, the platform packed closely with heads, an empty, torpid train. In the silence a voice. I could not see her, but I knew that intense, living, flexible, whip-like walking voice. I felt there the sharp triangle of brows drawn to the temples. Let me reach her. I must. Someone's tentacles caught my arm, my shoulder. I was nailed. In the silence I heard, "No, go up to them, and there they will cure you. There they will overfeed you with that leavened happiness. Satiated, you will slumber peacefully, organized, keeping time and snoring sweetly. Is it possible that you do not yet hear the great symphony of snoring? Foolish people! Don't you realize that they want to liberate you from these gnawing, worm-like torturing question marks? And you remain standing here and listen to me? Quick, up to the great operation. What is your concern? If I remain here alone, what does it matter to you if I want to struggle hopelessly, struggle so much the better? What does it matter to you that I do not want others to desire from me? I want to desire from myself. If I desire the impossible, another voice, slow, heavy, ah, the impossible, which means to run after your stupid fancies. Those fancies would whirl from under your very noses like a tail. No, we shall catch the tail, and then swallow it, and falling snoring, a new tail will be necessary. They say the ancients had a certain animal which they called ass. In order to make it go forward, they would attach a carrot to a bow, let it held it in front of its nose so that it could not reach it, and if it caught it and swallowed it, the tentacles suddenly let me go. I threw myself towards the place she was speaking from, but at that very moment everything was brought to confusion. Shouts from behind. "They are coming here! Coming here!" The lights twinkled and went out. Someone cut the cable, and everything was like a lava of cries, groaning, heads, fingers. I do not know how long we were rolled out about that way in the underground tube. I only remember that steps were felt, dusk appeared, becoming brighter and brighter, and again we were in the streets, dispersing fan-wise in different directions. Again I was alone, wind, gray, low twilights crawling over my head. In the damp glass of the sidewalk, somewhere very deep, there were light topsy-turvy walls, and figures moving alone. Feet upward, and that terribly heavy package in my hands pulled me down into the depths to the bottom. At the desk again, Udash was not yet there. Her room was dark and empty. I went up to my room and turned on the light. My temples, tightly bound by the iron ring, were pulsating. I passed and passed, always in the same circle. My table, my white package on the table. The bed, my table, the white package on the table. In the room to my left, the curtains were lowered. To my right, the knotty bald head over a book, the enormous parabolic forehead, wrinkles on the forehead like a series of yellow, illegible lines. At times our eyes met, and then I felt that those lines were about me. It happened at 21 o'clock exactly. Udash came in on her own initiative. I remember that my breathing was so loud that I could hear it and that I wanted to breathe less noisily, but was unable to. She sat down and arranged the fold of her uniform on her knees. The pinkish brown gills were waving. "Oh dear, is it true that you are wounded? I had just learned about it, and at once I ran." The piston was before me on the table. I jumped up, breathing even louder. She heard, and stopped halfway through a word, and rose. I had located the space on her head. Something distinguishingly sweet was in my mouth. My handkerchief. I could not find it. I spat on the floor. The fellow with the yellow fixed wrinkles would think of me. It was necessary that he should not see. It would be even more disgusting if he could. I pressed the button. I had no right to do that, but who cares about rights then? The curtains fell. Evidently she felt and understood what was coming, for she rushed to the door. But I was quicker than she, and I locked the door with the key, breathing loudly and not taking my eyes for a second away from the place on her head. You are mad! How dare you!" She moved backwards towards the bed, put her trembling hands between her knees, like a tense spring, holding her firmly with my gaze. I slowly stretched out my hands toward the table. Only one arm could move. I snatched the piston. "I implore you, one day, tomorrow I shall go and attend to these formalities." What was she talking about? I swung my arm, and I consider I killed her. Yes, you, my unknown readers, you have the right to call me murderer. I know that I should have dealt the blow on her head had she not screamed. For the sake, I agree. One moment, with trembling hands she tore off her uniform, a large, yellow, drooping body. She fell upon the bed. Then I understood. She thought that I pulled the curtains in order to what I wanted. This was so unexpected and so stupid that I burst out laughing. Immediately, the tense spring within me broke, and my hand weakened, and the piston fell to the floor. Here I learned from personal experience that laughter is the most terrible of weapons. You can kill anything with laughter, even murder. I sat at my table and laughed desperately. I saw no way out of that absurd situation and don't know what would have been the end of things had run their natural course, for suddenly a new vector in the arithmetical chain, the telephone rang. I hurried, grasped the receiver. Perhaps I heard an unfamiliar voice. Wait a minute. Annoying, infinite, buzzing. Heavy steps from afar, nearer and louder, like cast iron, and D-503, the well-doer speaking. Come at once to me. Ding. He hung up the receiver. Ding, like a key in a keyhole. Udash was on, still in bed, eyes closed, gills apart in the form of a smile. I picked up her clothes, threw them on her, and said through clenched teeth, "Well, quick, quick!" She raised her body on her elbow, her breast hanging down to one side, her eyes round. She became a figure of wax. What? Get dressed. That is what? Face distorted, she firmly snatched her clothes and said in a flat voice, "Turn away." I turned away, pressed my forehead against the glass. Light figures, sparks, were trembling in the black, wet mirror. No, all this was I myself within me. What did he call me for? Is it possible that he knows already about her, about me, about everything? Udash, already dressed, was at the door. I made a step towards her and pressed her hand as hard as though I hoped to squeeze out of it, drop by drop, what I needed. Listen, her name, you know who I'm talking of? Did you report her name? No. Tell the truth. I must. I care not what happens, but tell the truth. No. No, but why not? Since you. Her lower lip turned out like the lip of that boy, and her face tears were running down her cheeks, because I I was afraid that if I did you would stop, love. Oh, I could not. I understood. It was the truth, absurd, ridiculous, human truth. I opened the door.